You're listening to Season 2 of the Meez Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Sharkey, the founder and CEO of Meez, a culinary operating system for food professionals. On the show, we're going to talk to high performers in the food business, everything from chefs to CEOs, technologists, writers, investors, and more, about how they innovate and operate and how they consistently execute at a high level, day after day. And I would really love it if you could drop us a 5-star review anywhere that you listen to your podcast. That could be Apple, that could be Spotify, it could be Google. I'm not picky. Anywhere works, but I really appreciate the support. And as always, I hope you enjoy the show. All right, my guest today is a special one, Jimmy Kunz. He's the son of the late, great, world-renowned Chef Gray Kunz. And Gray has meant so much to so many of us in the culinary world. And for me, has been one of my greatest mentors ever. And Jimmy and I have gotten to know each other a lot over the years. And he is one of the sweetest people that you'll ever meet. And on top of that, he's built a really incredible business revolving around one of the most expensive ingredients in the world, truffles. It's been really incredible to see Jimmy grow as a human and as an entrepreneur, as a person over the years. And it is not easy following in the footsteps of someone like Chef Kunz. And Jimmy has found a way to both honor his dad and also find his own path along the way with his business, Truffleists. It reminds me a lot of the conversation I had last season with Chef Mark Porgione, as he was talking about his relationship with his dad, Larry, another incredible chef, and the challenges that come along with, stepping into the shoes of someone like that. So a theme that I'm digging into more this season in the podcast is, well, the impact that we have as chefs, as restaurant professionals on our children. I have 2 kids, and how we think about the idea of our children going into the hospitality world. Obviously, there's a lot of great things about it, and there's some challenges about it as well. And it was really interesting to hear Jimmy's perspective of growing up with a father who was such an incredible chef, but of course was also working a lot, and how they found quality time and the ways that they navigated that. So we, of course, talk about all things in Jimmy's business, the Truffleist, and he also has this really cool cheesesteak concept. We talk a lot about his dad. There's a really cool surprise that he brought me from Lespinasse that we'll talk about. And if you watch the video, you'll see, which is really cool. And generally, it was just great to catch up with him. So, as always, I hope you enjoy the episode and the time as much as I did. Jimmy Kunz, welcome to the show.
Josh Sharkey, it's an honor to be here and great to catch up with you.
The pleasure's mine. I don't remember. When's the last time we saw each other?
Too long ago. Probably Celebration of Life.
Yes.
For Dad.
Yeah. Well, for those that don't know, your last name gives it away, but your dad was one of the most incredible chefs ever to live, Chef Gray Kunz. And I wanted to start off, we're going to get into your background. I'll share it as well with people, but I don't think I ever asked you this before, but what was it like growing up with a dad like Chef Gray Kunz?
Well, pretty incredible, because I love to eat. Obviously, work-focused mentality. The joke's on Mom because she doesn't like to cook and married a chef, but as everyone knows in the industry, it's time-consuming. But overall, amazing, because I got to cook with him at home. So we had a great relationship as we progressed, but it was definitely challenging at times and then also incredible because he wasn't around much. And then we definitely valued the time we had together when we did have the time together. So
yeah, how often did you guys cook together?
Mainly upstate house. They had a house in the Clinton Corners, so that was really nice. I think it was mainly later in life when his schedule freed up a little bit.
So like post Lespinasse?
Post Lespinasse. Yeah, basically in that house upstate, which he designed that kitchen, which was just sick and beautiful with a drawer refrigeration and going to farmers markets together, and then him schooling me on bolognese. And I always remember his fascination for, making his own curries or tomato sauce. So we would go to the farm and get the seconds. And it was just like these big missions of packaging stuff up, which looking back at what I'm doing now, and that whole thing of having the preserved stuff is super cool. So we had some really nice moments, and we never really went out when we were upstate. We just cooked at home, whether it was custom grill on an open flame and getting a bunch of lobsters, or we really kept it simple together. And I think some of his favorite dishes was just having a steak or spaghetti bolognese. Spaghetti bolognese was usually a Sunday night type of thing. So it wasn't like this download of, let's make au poivre sauce and let's do a seafood sausage and kind of do these crazy, intricate, elevated things. It was really home cooking, and it was incredible.
I wouldn't have thought bolognese with Chef Kunz. Of all the things, I mean, even though, I'm sure at home you cook really simple, I would, of all the things, I would not have thought that. Did he ever take you like mushroom foraging? I know that was a big thing.
We did do mushroom hunting together. Personally, not my favorite thing to do.
Really? Why?
Don't tell anybody, because I sell truffles for a living. But I think that was also kind of his Zen moment, where he just loved to forage for mushrooms, and maybe the timing didn't line up for me. I was more excited about when he returned and making a cool, I don't know, morel and cream sauce or stuff like that. But we were blessed to go to a great camp, and they always had an open house. So Pops would disappear for the day, which was I loved, because I saw that he was just so happy to be on this beautiful property. It's Andes, New York, with a lake.
Oh, yeah.
And he would just go fishing and mushroom hunting all day. It's like the first one there and the last one to leave. And he would just have a blast there. But yeah, the mushroom hunting was definitely one of his passions, whether it was in upstate New York or traveling to Switzerland. I think his favorites probably porcini, chanterelles, and morels, to my knowledge. But
did you find porcinis up there?
I think so.
Yeah. Obviously, there's some great parts about having a chef for a dad. I want to talk a little bit also about the notion of like when you have kids, your thoughts of them going into the industry. What were some of you said there was challenging parts. What are some of the tough parts of like having a chef for a mom, or obviously it can be a mom or a dad? Well,
I'm sure you can relate to this with his cleanliness or standard of cleaning. So
that's funny. Of all the things, that would not be the first thing I think of, but that's, yeah, I mean, we used to use a Zamboni to clean the kitchen.
So those kind of things where obviously you worked for him, with him, and cleaning was a religious experience in the Gray Kunz kitchens, whether it was Lespinasse or Cafe Gray. So implementing that same style as a young lad, or with Julie, my sister, shout out to Julie, that kind of meticulous cleaning, maybe that wasn't at the level of what he was used to at work. So I think there was things where you could just see that switch when he was in the kitchen. It was tough to switch to the home kind of mindset, right? And I had a fun way of dealing with that, at a certain age. You're like, well, you understand that you can't switch off. I get it. This is your work environment. Sure, we happen to be at home. So along with Uncle Steven, who helped me out with Truffleist, who's not only my uncle, not by blood, my dad's best friend, one of my best friends, always been a father figure. So Steven, Dad, and I would always had fun in the kitchen. Dad being very serious, but also fun. And Steven and I would tell him no, which is something that he wouldn't hear in other kitchens. And we would poke at him. But I think circling back to your question, it's time, right? Like, you want to have time with the family. And I think the demand of the industry and the timing. And we got to a point where, sure, growing up, you're always going to butt heads with your parents, or you're going to do things that annoy them. But as we grew, we just really had this solid connection and mutual respect and understanding that we might not always have the time but we will make time. And when we have that time, it doesn't matter what time it is, if that makes sense. It doesn't need to be a holiday. It could be a weird Tuesday. So we kind of grew in this where we both get it kind of moment.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that same like driven mentality of, I want to treat every day like it's a vacation, right? Or just make the most out of every day, but just very driven with work as kind of work-focused mentality. So we got to this mutual respect of that and understanding. And then I think a lot of things clicked personally, because then we would just be really jiving. But it was fun to poke him in the kitchen upstate. Steven and I know, well, we want to do it this way. You're overcooking the turkey, for example. And Mr. Falango has a good story of his thermopen and the story where the turkey got away. And
it's funny you say time, and I think about, I have 2 kids now, and I'm not running kitchens anymore. I'm running a tech business, but I'm still, the same person I was 20 years ago, working, pretty crazy hours. And, I think about time as a parent in terms of quality versus quantity, and this balance of like, there has to be people doing great things in this world. And that means that they're going to need to take time to do that, and balancing time doing great things and also time of like taking care of your family. I feel like the quality of the time you have with them is far more important than the quantity, because you can never, it's hard to control how much quantity you have. I have to imagine it was less quantity of time than you would have liked.
I mean, Mom did a great job to fill in the blanks. I was always psyched to obviously go and have his food and have the luxury of going to eat at his restaurants and going to have that dining experience and seeing him, obviously with the waves of the hospitality industry and his kind of roller coaster ride in his career. There was definitely pockets when he was just doing the cookbook and we had lots of time together. And then his transition to Asia too was just great. So I think he also recognized as he was getting older that, it's not sustainable to be in the kitchen 7 days a week. And kudos to him, man. I mean, the amount of pressure to continue to reinvent yourself. And I think he would just always with the mindset of anything for the family. So it took me a little second to realize that. I think it was because of a genius, an artist, perfectionist. Those are all things. And then me kind of being in the food space in a different sector, understanding that you got to grind, you got to put it in, you got to shoot for perfection. And then kind of the sweet spot of the mutual understanding and respect of each other. That clicked a little bit later. And then we were just in a sweet spot. So for the last, I would say, 12, 15 years of his life, we just had this mutual respect, understanding on a different level than before. And we were just jiving. And when we had those moments to cook together, it was definitely special.
I want to dig into like the impact that he being who he was as Gray, and also just the idea of a chef like that as a parent, how that affected and impacted your work, your life, who you are. But before we do that, let's just diverge for a minute, because I want to dig into truffles. I want to learn more about it, and then we'll kind of go back and we'll weave a bit. But tell me about Truffleist. I want to, obviously, the name says a lot, but why did you start it, and what's the company, and just give us the download, man.
Sure.
And also, this stuff's pretty awesome. We got some.
We brought you some truffle fondue, little
truffle
homage
salami
to Switzerland and truffle salami.
Nice, man. Yeah. So
nice.
Why did you start it? Tell me about the company, man.
Sure, totally.
This is awesome. Thank you for this, by the way.
You're very welcome. We just celebrated 10 years. So we started in 2013. It started with Steven Falango and myself. We were at Steven's apartment in Carroll Gardens, and we made truffle butter, our flagship truffle butter. Luckily, through a connection of Dad, his old truffle supplier, we bought a pound of Perigord truffles just for fun I'd connected with her because at the time I was selling salami for a small salami company. I did that for 2 years, which was
Celine.
Celine. Let's give Celine a shout out. We're still in touch and good friends. We don't buy that many truffles from her anymore. But so we were figuring out a truffle salt with my old boss. Great salami company called Charlito's Cocina. We definitely have to give him a shout out. So Charlie's Cocina, great small brand, high-end salami charcuterie company, helped him with sales. But, as you're dealing with co-manufacturers, especially with meat and certain things, we were trying to figure out how to do a truffle salt. So, of course, my nature, Dad's got a truffle guy. Let's figure out if we can make the truffle salt for the truffle salami. And then, of course, always in touch with Steven. He was like, Jimmy, well, you're trying to make a truffle salt with Charlito here. Let's buy a pound of truffles and have some pasta and make truffle butter and have a good time. So it all started around just trying to have a good dinner. And what we did was we made this amazing, what we call our flagship truffle butter, which is just 1 pound of Perigord truffles, either from France or Spain these days, and 5 pounds of butter, a little bit of salt, just mixed together. So we just grind up the truffles, we make this amazing truffle butter, and then we packaged it in a fancy jar. And Steven was like, why don't you give this a shot? Why don't you go out and sell it? And at that point, we were at a cool time. Well, New York is always cool, but we were at a cool time for packaged good in New York City. There seemed to be just this, everybody and their mom was making either a ramp vinaigrette or pickles or a crazy condiment sauce. And you saw that at Smorgasburg. They don't even have this packaged tent. So anyway, I got on my scooter. I remember the little cool canvas hipster cooler bag that I had. And I was on my moped going door to door. And it's an expensive jar of truffle butter. No added flavoring, no added truffle oil, just very pure. We still stick to the same recipe today. We only make 500 jars of it. It's not available for distribution.
What do you sell it to?
The flagship truffle butter is literally just for our holiday markets now. We sold out pretty quickly this year. We gave it out as gifts. That first batch that we made, we use a great quality butter from Crim Hill Dairy. It's super high butter fat content, 86 and above. And that recipe hasn't changed, but it's interesting. That was the birth of the Truffleist brand. And then we kind of realized that a lot of people haven't had the luxury of having freshly shaved truffles or even the opportunity to purchase them, and that we had to expand the line to things that were a little bit more approachable or recognizable, or what general palate is looking for in terms of a packaged truffle product. Perishables, high cost,
This is the honeys and the oils and things like that.
Correct. It's all thanks to Steven. We just had our 10-year anniversary holiday staff party and 10-year anniversary party.
Awesome,
and
man.
Steven believed in me and helped me out with the initial investment, which was very small, no business plan, paid him back in 18 months. And we've kind of have grown for there. But we'll circle back to Dad right now because there was something that I wanted to bring up, which I think you'll get a kick out of. So we're developing, kind of logos and stuff, very small scale. And we're doing another batch truffle butter and talking to Dad about it. And he's giving his insight, which not wrong on his approach, but he was like, we should cook it in the port Madeira. And he always did this preserved truffles thing. And then that juice, you can use it for other things if you want to drain it, but also with moisture levels. Anyway, I don't want to get into the science aspect.
That jus is incredible.
Is the mecca. My vision for the flagship would just be super simple, pure, just truffles, butter, and sea salt. In hindsight, looking back, because there was this moment, I remember it very well, Josh. He's like, hey man, you should cook the truffles in this cool recipe that I have. And can I help you out with this thing that you're doing? And of course, looking back, I would say I have no regrets with the decision I made. But as you grow and you realize, he was like, can I be involved in and help you out with Truffleist, essentially? And I was like, no. I think it hurt. I think it hurt him a bit. But I knew I wanted to kind of pave my own road. But looking back, man, should have said yes. I might have stuck to my guns about the recipe just as like to just butt heads a bit for fun. But, celebrity chef endorsement on the flagship product could have helped out a lot. But I think that was an important in the very early stages of like, I got to do this on my own. I don't want to use your name and I want to try to build this thing for myself. But looking back, I should have said yes, because it would have been fun to do it with him. And of course, his name would have helped. But that was not the point. And he took it very well. We were just like very honest. And, Steven, it was just an interesting moment there.
I mean, it's understandable, though. You're walking in the footsteps of somebody, that created this incredible legacy. And it's funny, Mark Forgione was on the show last year, and he said something like really that I never thought about before. He said people really don't quite understand the challenge of having a father or any parent that has created this legacy, because there's this notion that you're just sort of milking off of whatever they've created. And it's like, no, I'm my own person. I'm going to do my own thing. And independent of something that they've created, I'm also, going to create something incredible. And that's a big challenge, because you always have to, you have to sort of step out of that light so that you can, find your own path. I'm sure that was a really hard decision, but I also, knowing Chef Gray, I'm sure he understood.
Yeah, that was a funny moment.
So you started with the butter, and first of all, like the selling preserved truffles in the Port Madeira would be pretty dope, except how much would that fucking cost? Because you got to use good pork, good Madeira, and then it's just literally truffle, Port Madeira. That's not going to be cheap. And then who's going to, you also have to know how to use it. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Delicious. We still have some jars in Mom's fridge that actually Steven just used up. They're still really good. Preserved truffle is nice. A lot of companies are doing like carpaccio. We have like a truffle sauce, which is kind of a mushroom tapenade with some summer truffle. Very different, but that recipe and is pretty cool with the Port Madeira, and you can do some really nice sauces. You got to have the black winners for that product.
Yeah.
And we would encounter, I think, a similar hurdle with the flagship truffle butter, where it's kind of outpriced for kind of the masses. But
maybe talk a little bit about some of the other products that you have. And I also just curious, like the sourcing. You mentioned cool place that you get them, like how you're sourcing these truffles.
Yeah, sure. So we grew from the flagship to our second item was kind of a summer truffle butter. So we pivoted to that as our second SKU. Third one, which we discontinued, was truffle cream cheese, but might be coming back. That had a short little... That was fun to be at Smorgasburg every weekend. We got to test some SKUs out, and then we went honey, salt, mustard, oil, and then the line progressed. But we've always been very proud to be based in New York City. As a New Yorker, growing up here and being exposed to great food and the melting pot of this amazing city, took a lot of pride of staying here and growing here. That's why a big part of our DNA is these holiday markets and being in small specialty shops. But with that being said, I think what makes us different, which is a common question, is how we source our base ingredient. I mean, I'm like a mustard guy, right? Or hot sauce guy, both. I don't just have two mustards in the fridge, right? It's a Swiss mustard, it's a French mustard, it's a Polish one that's easy in Greenpoint to get. So I'm always like kind of been a condiment fan. So just like how I treat cooking at home, you got to get the best stuff. And I try to do very little. So the base ingredient is really what we focus on. So for example, Crim Hill Dairy, great farm upstate. That's where we get our butter. Tremblay apiaries, they sell on the weekends at the Union Square Farmers Market. We get the honey from them. So wherever we can, celery from France. We try to just get an amazing high quality base ingredient. And then, of course, the truffles we get are excellent as well.
This show is brought to you by, you guessed it, Mies. Mies helps thousands of restaurants and food service businesses all over the world build profitable menus and scale their business successfully. If you're looking to organize your recipe IP and train your team to put out consistent product every day in less time than ever before, then Mies is just for you. And you can transform all those old Google Docs and Word docs and PDFs and spreadsheets and Google Sheets into dynamic, actionable recipes in Mies in lightning speed. Plus, stop all that manual work of processing invoices because Mies will digitize all your purchases automatically. And there's a built-in database of ingredient yields, prep yields, and unit of measure conversions for every ingredient, which means you're going to get laser-accurate food costs in a fraction of the time. Visit www.getmeez.com. That's GETMEEZ.com to learn more. And check out the show notes moving forward because we're going to be adding promotions and discount codes so that all of you lovely and brilliant Mies podcast listeners get a sweet deal on Mies. I'm so curious how you source truffles at scale like this because, you know, in the restaurants, you got Celine or someone like that, truffle guy coming in and there's a box and it feels a little bit like black market. Like what is that like sourcing them for, you know, for some sort of scale with like a CPG company?
Yeah, it took some figuring out for sure. And Celine being an amazing supplier and partner in the beginning. And, you know, she's catering to the Thomas Kellers, the high end, or anyone who's using fresh truffles. And then, of course, as you scale, you want to avoid the middleman, right? And go directly to the source. So we've actually figured out a couple of ways, right? We partner with someone like Celine and they're overstock and she gives us a call and says, hey, you know what? I overordered by 10 pounds and one chef canceled on me. So I have 15 pounds extra. I'm vacuum sealing it. I'm going to put it in the freezer and truffles freeze really well.
Yeah.
And then also based on our production, depending on the item, we do need to process, clean, cook, pasteurize, dehydrate, depending on what it is. So for us, we don't need that perfect first-class truffle for tableside shaving. Depending on what it is, we can use pieces or we can use some that are smaller. So we're known as the freezer clearers with the guys selling fresh truffles. So as the season changes, they've accumulated and frozen their overstock on a weekly basis. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh, Jimmy, I got 80 pounds of summer truffle. And they're just trying to cut their losses on that. So they'll give us a deal on it, right? Hopefully. And we clear out their freezer so they can start fresh with the next.
That's so smart, man. That's so smart.
So that has worked out really well with some strategic partners who have a very good relationship with, but it takes a while and that timing needs to be right, right? They're very smart about how they purchase because it's so expensive. And then we do go direct to Europe and import on our own. Let's say we need 100 pounds in a shot for a run. We can't wait for that. But we have a few importers that we deal with and then go direct to Europe.
All right. So I was a little nervous about asking this question because I'm not sure, but I want to talk about truffle oil because it has a stigma and there's a lot of bad truffle oil out there. It can be good. A lot of people get truffle oil and it's not what they, hope it's going to be. It's not obviously the case here. So what is typical truffle oil that people see? And then what is it that you're making and your thoughts on the whole truffle oil business?
I'm glad you're asking this question. I think it's an important one to ask and to answer. There are fresh truffles and then there are truffle products. There's a huge difference between the two. We happen to make a very high quality truffle oil that is with extra virgin olive oil from Italy. So there's a good start right there with some really nice olive oil. We use organic flavoring, which is approved by Whole Foods. We also have a slice of truffle in there. So I think there's very different ways of making it. I think there's very different levels, quality of the flavoring that's in And this goes across the board, not just to truffle oil, right? Truffle flavoring is a huge conversation that we hear at these holiday markets or get emails about. And I guess to make it a little bit more black and white, there's fresh truffles and there's truffle products. And truffle products all have a truffle flavoring it.
What is truffle flavor?
It depends on which kind of truffle product or which company you're using. But it could be organic, naturally derived, that's approved like Whole Foods that we're using, or it could be something that's made by a flavoring house that might be mid-tiered. There's a wide range
There's a
spectrum of quality, flavor profile, some that get mixed with other mushroom notes.
Mm-hmm. Are there things other than mushrooms that they use to make these flavorings?
I don't know. It is definitely a conversation that turns people off sometimes when they hear it's like, oh, is it like vanilla extract, or is it, because you have different quality levels within that. At the end of the day, obviously safe to eat, but there's also different quality levels within it that are, some are not naturally derived, some are.
Yeah.
And there's
definitely a lot of in between. And you can tell the difference, like, for sure. And there are some that work really well and are good. And there's some that you're like, first of all, when you see something that's like, $2 for a bottle of truffle oil, you're like, there's something going on there. Because first of all, just good olive oil or any oil costs money, right? And then any amount of truffle costs money. So there's going to be some sort of cost to that. I was always curious, by the way, oil is such an incredible medium, or fat is just such an incredible medium to like carry flavor, right? Like, I remember making like vanilla oil boulet for things, and it was just like this bomb of vanilla flavor when you mix it into oil. And I'm always curious why vehicle is extra virgin olive oil as opposed to like just like a more neutral like grapeseed or sunflower oil or something like that. Is it just because it's just more diverse to be able to use in salad dressings and things like that? Or
yeah, I think truffle is better for finishing product, and I think you're going to command a higher price point for extra virgin olive oil too, or higher end olive oil. You don't necessarily want to heat truffle oil either.
Yeah.
Then some of that flavor goes away. Also, fat and truffle work so well. Like the butter, I mean, that's really kind of an old school way to preserve fresh truffles. But my favorite products are the ones that are all the perishable items that are like high in fat, the butter, the salami. We do also, going back to balance, we have kind of a spectrum within Truffleist and just the truffle market in general of, are we subtle, medium, or intense? And we kind of have a range with that. So our oil, I think, is very well balanced. It definitely hits you. Our salami is like delicate little truffle, and then you're just like, oh, I'm eating salami in less of a lingering way. So I think we have a nice, within our brand and just within truffle products in general, intensity level is like a thing that you see. But
that's interesting. Yeah. So you have these markets and you're selling obviously like the products, but you're also somewhat randomly selling cheesesteaks, which, by the way, I'm obsessed with cheesesteaks. And my wife always like thinks I'm psychotic because at the end of a night, if it's like a weekend, because we don't do this on weekdays, I'm like, I want a cheesesteak at like 11 o'clock at night. I could eat a cheesesteak literally every night, a cheesesteak. How did you come up with selling cheesesteaks? And was that to sort of like bridge the gap of like things that you could sell outside of just, bottled products or jarred products?
Yeah. I mean, you start doing smorgasbord and you see you're not selling too many jars and there's a line, for a great burger or poutine, but it's kind of a two-parter there. Holiday markets, always big shout out to Urban Space. We would not be where we're at. The holiday markets have always been a big part of the success with the products. And then starting out, I was in Astoria. I was the super for about 6 years. This apartment. We had the luxury of like a big apartment and grinding and, just really difficult. No money to go out, just like being very in it. And I would host a lot of dinner parties because it was like, you guys bring stuff, I'll cook, let's just have a great time. No one needs to spend crazy money going out to a restaurant. We're just going to jive, and I'm going to cook something easy, and we're going to have a blast. And one of those nights was cheesesteaks. And my favorite dish that mom makes, and one of my favorite dishes anyway, is lasagna. And it ties into cheesesteaks. I'll get to it. She got taught by her Italian teacher to make this amazing lasagna with bechamel in it, which is a certain part of Italy. I don't know which part, but anyway, probably the South. And I just love mom's lasagna. So sick. And I made these cheesesteaks with the homemade bechamel with a nice kind of rustic baguette. And I always loved cheesesteaks. One of my buddy and I, we always have a mission, whether it's a street cart guy, whether it's a storefront, whether it's Shorty's, doesn't matter. Like, we just went on this mission in New York City. Where is the best cheesesteak? And like, where can we get one? Whether we're craving it in bed at 11 or it's like 11 a.m. on a Saturday. So there's always been this thing, New York City, sandwiches, cheesesteaks. It's just like a great bite, even when it's not great.
Yeah.
So made the bechamel and made everyone these cheesesteaks. And people were like, this is good. And I was like, well, good. I'm glad you guys are happy. And then their next thing was, where's the truffle honey? Where's the truffle oil? Where's the truffle hot sauce? And that's kind of how it started. And then we ended up doing it at Smorgasburg. We ended up doing it at holiday markets. And we started that in 2014. We brought it out to Los Angeles, Smorg, did that for one season. And we were at Bryant Park Winter Village this year. And
cheesesteaks and tiramisu for me, like two things that like, it doesn't matter how good or bad it is. I'm going to eat it and I'm going to like it. But when it's really good, you're like, holy shit. Like I've had like incredible tiramisu in Bologna, Italy, and like knocked my socks off. Like, holy shit, this is amazing. Right. And I've had tiramisu from like the random pizza joint that like I don't even know where it comes from, probably frozen somewhere else. And I'm like, this is terrible, but it's great. Cheesesteaks are kind of the same thing, but when you get a good one, you're like, fuck, man, I gotta get that again.
Yeah. So we obviously whole different beast, packaged goods, but the cheesesteak concept is to really expose kind of to the country that you can put truffle on anything, whether it's your leftover slice of pepperoni pizza that you're heating. And that was the point behind it. And then there's obviously a lot of pride in that food concept because we want everyone to be like, oh, hey, truffleists, have a great experience at the cheesesteak booth and then hopefully convert them.
Oh, yeah. That's really smart, man. Yeah.
To a truffleist customer. But everything from the bread from Caputo Bakery, which is in the neighborhood I grew up in, Cobble Hill, to Romeo Brothers Butcher that does our steak, which is amazing, that comes in daily. So for us, it's about you showing up with your family, mom, my nephew, Julie, come in and being very proud of the sandwich that we're serving where, there's high food cost and all the stuff is, it's not steakums, a frozen puck, and the bechamel is homemade and it has a truffle twist. And I think we got really lucky by default because, of course, the majority of the demographic are tourists at these markets. So no learning curve. Because most people in America know what a cheesesteak is. And then there's this cool truffle twist.
Yeah.
And sure, it's food porny. And it's got that whole cool thing. And it's a hot mess. And it's cold. And it's good winter food. But then it's actually a very solid bite.
Yeah.
So I think we found our sweet spot. We have lots to improve there. But I'm super happy how that brand has progressed. And we put a lot of work into that too.
That's so smart, man. With all these CPG products, the tough thing, we were just talking about this yesterday, actually, because, you kind of need, people that buy a jar of this thing or a bottle of this thing, they kind of need to, what am I going to do with it? Like a lot of times it's a recipe. Like, what's a recipe I can use with this thing? That's how they kind of like the pathway of how they're going to buy that thing. And it's so smart when using this cheesesteak, using like food, prepared food. If you're trying to like increase the size of your category of the CPG thing that you have, the product you have, because you give people a reason to use it somewhere else, because that person that may have thought about buying truffle oil and they're like, yeah, but I'm not sure exactly what to use it for. I guess I could use it for a salad. Then they eat it on a fucking cheesesteak and like, I'm going to put this on all my sandwiches now. Such a smart way to like sell your product.
Yeah, I think
I don't know why more people don't do that.
Well, we saw a trend this holiday, which was very nice, where my friend Cassandra, who does an amazing curry paste and hot sauce Malaysian condiment CPG brand, Mama Lam's.
Oh, yeah, that stuff's great.
So she got written up for her laksa, and then there's Hell's Kitchen Hot Sauce, who did like a paella burrito. So I like how the organizers are thinking that, like letting some veteran CPG brands then come into the more, ready to eat food and kind of highlight their core business. And I think when you look at CPG brands of branding or how they operate in certain things, when they get into the food space, they're building a brand. This is not just a food kiosk.
Yeah.
Let's crank out X. They're looking at it in a more methodical kind of way of like, so that was exciting to see. But yeah, it was just lucky, honestly, Josh. And we just, we want to do something and develop, but for now, it's just seasonal. We have some other things that we want to do. We added a fries only booth at Union Square this year, which turned out just fries and nuggets and mozzarella.
Well, you're
sticks.
also, I've had to fly a lot lately and see truffle products pretty often. They're in the airports. How did that happen?
Airports is a good one. I did prep for this a bit, so I had to think long and hard about how we actually landed in the airports. I think we got lucky with that one as well, where it was either from a trade show lead. I think we just actually got one from Hudson, and they also have done a good job in New York City to like highlight local companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a converted fancy food trade show lead that ended up progressing. Or we've been with Taste New York, which is a great, government store on the Taconic, or they have some in the airport. So I think it was a progression of sometimes it's like doing something long enough, or a potential client sees your stuff at, for example, Taste New York and is like, well, I do the purchasing for Hudson News at the airports, and I met them and they had a good vibe at a trade show. It sometimes progresses and takes time, but that's good.
Well, for everybody listening, if you are flying somewhere and need to get a gift, or coming back home to New York and need to get a gift, perfect opportunity here with Truffleist. All right, so I want to, if it's okay with you, I want to sort of like circle back to the impact that your dad had. You talked about like, obviously the obsession with cleanliness and focus and perfection. I was at this like mastermind, like CEO conference a while back, and we were trying to derive like what's our biggest value, or values that we have. And it's funny, something came to mind where I immediately thought of your dad, because the way in which to sort of get to what are your core values personally is, what are the things that make you the most angry? That was the question I asked, like, what makes you angry? What makes you really angry? And I answered the question with all these things. And the output of it, anyway, I won't sort of bore you with the story, but was that the core value is excellence. And it's like the first thing I think of when I think of Chef Kunz is not perfection or hard work or sternness. All those things are true, but like this pursuit of excellence. And excellence and perfection are sort of different, in that perfection is kind of, it's a little bit more like tactile, whereas excellence is this, it becomes more of a pursuit. And it's something about like everything that he did, you could never just be, as is. He had to like create some, like it was taken to a level of excellence that it just, very Chef Kunz. And I have to imagine a lot of that carried on to things that you do. And I'd love to just get a sense, like, what are there things that in your life or in your work or in like the relationships you have or the business you have where you think of things like that your dad instilled in you or that you experienced that like have now become part of who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. We can always do better, but how do we do it together? And this goes into a layered thing about leadership and realistic expectations. But as his son, I can say the guy was a perfectionist. But I think he was also just a fantastic human. But I do say this at work with the grain of nice fleur de sel sea salt is shoot for perfection and achieve excellence, right? And no one's perfect, but shoot for the stars, and we're gonna have to improve, or we're gonna achieve excellence. And excellence is a continuing work to excellence. But if you shoot for excellence, you're probably just going to get good by human nature. So I think there is that work ethic that we can always do better, but in a positive way. We did it, but how can we even do better? And I think that definitely was passed on to Dad.
Well, I'm going to now sort of tie this into this really, really badass thing that you just brought that I want to show here, if you're cool with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is for anybody that... Okay, so anybody that knows Chef Kunz, before Cafe Gray, he was the chef of Lespinasse in New York, 4 stars, New York Times, changed the game. He's just really... The impact he's had for chefs everywhere is incredible. And Jimmy, you brought... this is insane. You brought all of the recipes, the entire Lespinasse menu repertoire, volume 1 and 2, in these pretty pristine books here that we are going to digitize in Mies. But first of all, thank you for bringing this, because this is just, one, it brings back so many memories, and just looking at like cassoulet of curried turnips with pea sprout salad. I see kokum in here. Who was using kokum 20 years ago? Lasagna, yellow.
Yeah, the trend with pea shoots are everywhere.
Yeah, this had to have been, 25 plus years ago. But northern pike, I remember, we would fly in pike from the Great Lakes, walleye. Oh, he's just like naming types of, so this was the book that every cook got? Is that?
Assume. We got to hit up Chef Mike Citarella and ask, but I know that. Oh, look at that.
Oh, poche poisson with truffle sauce. Let's see.
Bingo.
We got butter, shallots, truffle, white port, chicken stock, cream. But yeah, this is sauce peregrine. This is so nice. Cool, man. Steamed artichokes you were just talking about.
So yeah, this was in the house upstate, and it was put into storage. And I was like, man, this is a lot of work to get digitalized, and it's old school. Sambal for veal.
They're making sambal here for veal. This was like, it could have been 3 decades. I don't remember when Lespinasse closed, but onions, garlic, Thai chilies, galangal powder, tamarind paste, curry leaves,
tangerine peel,
liver spice mix, coconut milk. This just didn't exist. People were not making this unless you were maybe at a Malaysian restaurant. But like,
he definitely left something out here.
Oh yeah. There's more than peppercorns, cloves, and star anise. So it's in chapters, and it looks like each chapter is just maybe there's 4 chapters. I'm gonna guess it's like each season. Menu number 2: foie gras, seared foie gras, pineapple confit, cracked black pepper, and pea puree. This is insane. I'm so excited to just dig into this thing.
That's 1994.
Oh yeah, so this is winter of 1994. So what is that? 04, 14, 24. Yeah, 30 years. Jesus, 30 years ago.
Yep.
30 years ago doing this. It's just insane. Look at the prices. It's not cheap. $33 for grilled striped bass, salt pepper reduction. Good for him. Look at this, all the different types of fish. This is such a cool thing to give to your cooks. Rouget, turbo, bass, explaining each one and how they cook it. I saw one page that was just explaining all the types of wild mushrooms that they use. This is just insane.
Thanks for helping me out with this. I think everybody should be able to access, and everything being digital in today's world, it'll be so helpful. I thought of you immediately when I found these in storage, and I brought them to.
Well, we're gonna get them transformed into really dope, interactive recipes and content in Mies, and then I'll pass it over to you to do what we want with it, but we can get everybody involved. But there's just so much gold in here. This is so cool. So thank you for bringing this.
And thanks for your help with it. I know the the whole gang. I don't know, the amazing chefs that I was exposed to growing up, you being one of them, Larry Finn, Matt DeLiso, Jean Rella, the list goes on where, and I was speaking about this recently, where I'm so lucky, obviously, to have been eating amazing food growing up and being exposed to great flavors and having a rock star dad as a chef. But to see you guys, where you guys are all at, rock stars, and to have you guys all as friends as something, obviously, with losing dad and just in general, that it's an amazing thing. I have this whole other friend group of all these rock star chefs that have worked with my dad on just like on a great friend level. And so the reason why I bring it up is because we sent, the picture to the group text message thread and everyone's excited. So whether you're a chef by career or at-home chef, to be able to access this for anyone, I think is huge. And, there's waves of things trending, and it's always cool to look back at old recipes and slide into what's popular now and get inspired. So I'm pumped that this will just be, with your help, is just so grateful that anyone will have access to these old school kind of recipes.
And I mean, honestly, they're not even old school. 30 years later, they're still relevant. It's still relevant and insane. So yeah, we'll make it searchable. We'll make it all that stuff. Well, I'm grateful for you, man. And also just so proud to see all what you've built and what you've done. And, you could have gone a lot of different paths, and you've built something incredible. And you've also just, become such a, not just good friend, but just a really incredible professional. So thanks, man, for coming here.
Just nice to jive and hang with you.
Yeah.
And honored to, be here chatting with you about Dad, about Truffleist, about the whole industry family behind Dad, and really just honored. I mean, just a guy selling some truffle products and love good food, and it's really, truly a pleasure. And I love what you're doing on this platform and recipes like this. Yes, there's amazing, relevant things in this Bible, but the way it's formatted, it's important. What you're doing is cool. And
well, I think this is a bit of a tangent, but the idea of analog paper cookbooks to me is kind of insane. I mean, there's a place for them as a chef. You sort of, there's something to creating a cookbook that can sit on a coffee table, but I have hundreds and hundreds of books at home, and the idea that I have to go search and find the page, and then I'm going to make one, a smaller batch of it, and I got to convert everything. And how do I find the one thing out of all this? Is just, there's just a better way. So I'm stoked to give that to everybody, and I'm super stoked to do that with this. So anyways, it was awesome, man. It was awesome having you on. I can't wait to eat a cheesesteak, by the way.
We just wrapped the season, and we were right here. But next year, and we got some plans in the future to maybe do something a little bit more permanent with cheesesteaks. But
anything else you want to share?
Yeah, order that extra round of oysters and enjoy. Try to miss less of the moments and make the most out of the moments you have, whether it's with friends, family, or your work family. And I'm so lucky to have such a great supportive group. Most of our team, the core Truffleist team, is just one big family, actually. And then, of course, the network of the food industry friends and then childhood friends. I would just say, just enjoy life and eat good bites with the people you love.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's a great place to end. All right, man.
Thank you, brother.
Yep. Thanks for tuning into the Mies podcast. The music from the show is a remix of the song Art Mirror by an old friend, hip-hop artist, Fresh Daily. For show notes and more, visit getmees.com/podcast. That's GETMEEZ.com/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you can share it with fellow entrepreneurs and culinary pros, and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Keep innovating, don't settle, make today a little bit better than yesterday, and remember, it's impossible for us to learn what we think we already know. See you next time.